Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to the SSK Cyber Club. For anyone that is just joining us for the first time, SSK stands for Smarter, Safer, and Kinder Online. We have started this club to talk about big issues and to build community around this very important topic. So this episode of SSK is being sponsored by Kermode Education. Kermode is perfect for educators and parents who want to help set their kids up to be better digital citizens. So by using cutting-edge software, Kermode helps users evaluate online content, build media and digital literacy skills, and flex their critical thinking muscles when consuming information online. This episode is being recorded, so you can always go back and watch it again on the Kermode Education YouTube page. I'm your host, Paige Whitson. I'm a team coordinator and project manager for a Kamloops-based software company. And I am currently in beautiful Sikamoose, so just enjoying a little bit of this lovely summer weather that we're getting. But I am very pleased to be joined again today by Sean. So we've got Sean Campbell with us. Sean is a publishing industry veteran who has been working in ed tech for over 15 years. So welcome, Sean.
Hey, Paige, thank you so much for having me back. I love talking digital literacy. And yeah, it does look lovely where you are. Sikamoose looking. Yeah, it's really nice. And yeah, today it's one of my favorite topics around digital literacy because with technology and with digital tools, we often think of technology as being very stale and very lifeless because it's robots, right? They don't have any feelings. It's code. It's 0101, right? But really, when we're on social media or we are interacting with anything online, we're human. We have a lot of very powerful emotions. And that's very obvious very quickly when you're on social media, or if you ever have the misfortune of clicking on the comment section of any part of the internet. People are very fired up in there. It's just real spicy, right? People have some big emotions and they let them show, they let them fly. So today we're going to really get into understanding how we feel when we're online, because it plays an enormous role in how we interact with each other, and how people really try to influence us online by the content they create to try to generate those really big emotions. And so, like, Paige, do you click on the comment section ever? Or do you have a safe space, or do you just wade into that world ever?
I am guilty of dabbling for sure. And I usually only dabble when I'm looking for a little bit of that spice. I'm like, oof, yeah. I know there's some very fired up in here. What are people saying? But it can kind of suck you in. You can kind of get like consumed by the emotions that are being thrown out there. So you got to really okay, wait, this doesn't involve me at all. I got to get out of here.
Yeah, it's addictive in a strange way. Like I try to stay away from it, but sometimes I will click on it, and it's like being at a zoo. Like I can't understand who these people are. Like, why are you spending this time? You have a short life. Like, life is short, and you're spending it screaming at people online, or it baffles me, and it's mesmerizing for some reason. Yeah. So I also get sucked in. But there are some safe spaces out there as well that people have carved out. I find I have like really defined areas on Twitter. And from what I understand, Twitter is like an awful place for people screaming at each other. But I really just have a work bubble, and it's really positive. And so you can carve out these nicer portions of the comment section. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and how that's a really positive step that you can take. Instead of just like, I love sports, and the things that people write on sports chat section, the comment section is just awful. Yeah. I do wade into it from time to time. So first of all, we're going to talk about, how do our emotions play a role, and where do we see our emotions take front and center online? Like, why do content creators play to this, right? And so content creators know that if we feel something powerful, be it anger or excitement or sadness, what have you, we're much more likely to engage with that content. And so we're going to share it, or we're going to comment on it, or we're going to like it. And that really is the currency of the internet right now, right? Like that not only makes the money, but there's status attached to having something viral. And so what you often see is you'll see really salacious headlines, or you'll see really graphic imagery or videos. And this is often on social media, which we spend a tremendous amount of time on. And once we see it, we immediately feel that. We feel anger or excitement or what have you. We feel it intensely, right? And so all too often we're not really thinking about how we feel. We just feel it and react. And we're seeing in this digital world that doesn't really generate a lot of positive conversation or, reasonable arguments between, people you trust. It's a lot of screaming and yelling. And then there's trolls who their whole reason to be on there is just to drive you nuts. And and so really, really understanding how we feel and having the skills and the strategies to deal with those emotions without just instantly reacting is really important. And we're gonna talk about understanding how we feel and ways that we can talk to our kids and our students and our families, and strategies that we can use to really think about our emotions and react to them in a positive way. And so when I say that, Paige, does that ring true to you? Like, do you consciously think about and notice your emotions before you react to things on social media?
Yeah, I don't very often react. And I feel like social media almost provides that buffer for me to like check my emotions, because I have to go through the effort of typing out my feelings. It's when you're having an in-person conversation, I find it's easier to be reactive because it's like just a split second. I can tell you what I think about that. But over social media, having to type it out, I see things, and definitely, things elicit different emotions in me. But thankfully, I feel like I've got that kind of muscle built up and that self-awareness to be like, that's not worth typing out my reaction. I'm just gonna.
So that's really interesting, because everything around social media is built for that immediate interaction. Right? It's not built for, hey, take a second to really calm down and think about this. You know what I mean? It's like with the click of a button, you can like it or you can share it. Like it is very instant gratification-y. And so it's interesting to hear you say that. It's like in person, it's easier to just like yell at that person. I can verbalize it right now and let you know how I feel. Because what we see online is that anonymous piece is so intoxicating for people. I don't know if there's a better word for it, but it feels amazing to be able to say whatever I want to say, and there really are no consequences, right? Yeah. Whereas in person, if you said something to someone, there are real world consequences to that. And maybe they're good, maybe they're bad, but you're getting instant feedback. And generally that's a much more positive experience, because even if someone's mad, there's free feedback from that. I mean, I don't just get to yell and scream and say this thing that I want to say and then disappear and not talk about it. So that's really interesting, because that's good, right? Like that you feel like there's a barrier. There's like a second where you can take that breath and say, okay, I'm not going to say this right away, or, you know what I mean? Even sometimes an hour later, you don't care as much, Yeah. 5 minutes later, it's not as big a deal as it was the second you read it or saw it. And those are excellent opportunities to just move on with your life, instead of diving in. So one of the big tools, it sounds really simple, but it really is just, we were talking about, it's patience. And it really is a skill that you need to build. And it can be an incredibly effective tool to put in your digital literacy toolbox. And this really applies to things like, if there's breaking news and everyone is speculating about who did what to whom, when did this happen, why does this always happen, do you dive right in? Is that you out there in YouTube land? Or if someone says something you don't like, you just smash that all caps button and just start wailing away on your keys. Like, does that sound familiar to you? And if that is you, patience isn't a skill that you have yet, right? Like, it's something you're going to have to start to build to be a much more positive digital citizen. And that's not to say that you don't weigh in on these conversations and you don't have an opinion. You absolutely can, if that's what you want to, where you want to interact with people. But patience can help you wait until all the facts are actually out, right? Like, the human brain doesn't work. It doesn't really process information later on. So what I mean by that is, when there's breaking news and everyone's speculating from every angle and no one really knows what's going on, you don't really have a ton of concrete information. you just find something that you think is true and you say, yep, another example. I knew it. I'm so smart, right? And then even if that is completely contradicted a week later or a month later, all your brain remembers is that you're right, right? And so people start to form really strong worldviews on inaccurate information. That happens often, more often than not, unfortunately. And so with patience, if you start to practice that, if you start to ask the right questions, if you say, you know what, I'm going to wait a week before I start screaming at this person, or before I start to form these ideas until all the facts are out, or until I've cooled off enough to really build some type of empathy or build some understanding, or maybe not even care anymore and move on with my life. But then it gives you that time that you can communicate much more effectively. You're not as frustrated, you're not as angry, so you can still interact if you want to. Or you can not even waste your time. If it's someone who's a troll or someone you'll never meet and you'll never change their mind, find someone online or offline that's worthy of your time, that you can debate a subject that you're passionate about in a much more productive way. You know what I mean? And patience is that skill. Like that's what's really gonna help you. And better yet, patience can be calming. And so it's gonna give you time to build that empathy and understanding. And what I mean by that is sometimes you just get so upset at these people, you hate them or they're idiots, or you just need to make sure that they know they're wrong. That week that you take afterward, and maybe even set a notice in your phone to be like, go check on that thing again or whatever. You can start to think, okay, why did they say that? You know, like what's going on in their world? If you want to go there, you can say like, maybe they had a rough day, rough upbringing, different cultural background, like what have you. And you still do not have to agree with them with an ounce of your being. But again, you're building that patience, that empathy, that understanding. It gives you time, and it gives you a better perspective on what you're talking about and the people you're interacting with. And so often things that seem emotionally overpowering in the moment, they become much less impactful when you're given some time to think about them. And that goes for all facets of our life. Like how many times have you gotten into a fight with a significant other, or a friend or a parent, and then a day later you couldn't care any less? It means nothing. And so pull that out into some stranger online, right? Like give it some time before you wade in. And so it sounds like you already practice, Paige, it sounds like you already practice that patience and empathy online, but do you, outside of, okay, it's going to take me time to write this, do you have any kind of personal strategies that you use to just make sure that you're thinking about that other human on the other side?
Yeah, totally. I think that I am very much an optimist at heart. And so I like to believe that most of the people out there, even when they're saying things that I don't agree with and I think are, like mean or hurtful or inappropriate or whatever, I try to think like, wow, I feel sad that they had an upbringing maybe, or they had an experience that has led them to have this viewpoint that it just doesn't feel good. I can't imagine that person is like feeling very happy to write something like that. So I think that's another, for one, I'm like, I don't want to take this out. And also, I feel sad for you that you feel that way. That's good luck.
Yeah. And just like an example of that is like, I had a really good family friend who was very anti-vaccine, and I honestly don't care. Like it doesn't, like I'm vaccinated, but I'm not that worried about him. But he would send me things that I thought were ridiculous, and it made me mad. Like I was just like, I can't believe you believe this thing that you're sending me. It seems silly to me, but every other part of him is lovely. Do you know what I mean? Like he's so giving. He's just an amazing person. And so I try to think about that every time I'm online with someone for all kinds of issues that I think is just ridiculous. Like I think your viewpoint is just ridiculous. Like I can't understand why you think this way, but that's a tiny piece of who they are, And like I'm with you. Like I'm very optimistic about humanity and our futures and everything. And I think the vast majority of us are wonderful people. There are a few people who are just truly evil, right? And so when we disagree on things, that doesn't mean they wouldn't like feed you if you were hungry or give you a jacket if you were cold. Like we're still in the same team. So that's something that I use, and it sounds like you do as well. Just just it helps you like calm things down a bit and really gain again some perspective and some empathy that we don't have to agree on it all, but let's not get so fired up that we really hurt people with and just ourselves, right? With like that anger does nothing for anybody.
Totally. Yeah. And we don't need to start like throwing insults at them because they said, like you said, this one piece that I don't agree with that doesn't inherently make them a bad person. So I don't need to insult their character.
Totally. And we don't know, often we don't even know their character, right? Like if you're, and it's like they might be amazing in so many other ways that you agree with, that you think is fantastic. You're on the same page for, 95% of the other things, but we seem to get very upset about the one thing that's sort of very present in all our lives at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so patience is a huge tool. So how do we actually build strategies into our lives and conversations into our families and our classrooms so that we can actually build these skills? And so we always need to be aware of how we feel when we read or see something online. Sounds easy. So the biggest thing is just to pause and reflect. And the length of that pause is really up to you and you figuring out maybe different things which work for you in different situations. But once you understand how you're feeling, think about why. Because sometimes there's things that are really clear. This happened and I feel sad about it. But sometimes with those salacious headlines or pictures, we read them or we see them, but we don't actually read the content of the article that they're linked to. We often don't. And so often the content of that article doesn't really have the same intensity as the headline and the image that goes with it, because again, they just want to elicit that response. And so digging a bit deeper and giving ourselves time to really understand it, not only calms us down and makes us have more of a reasonable conversation about it, but we learn a lot more, right? We become much more well-informed digital citizens. And so here's some questions that you can ask with your family. And I'll add these to the comment section of the YouTube video. So you don't have to memorize these, everybody out there. But number one is just what I was saying. So does the content of this article or discussion match the intensity of the headline or the image and video that grab my attention? Because so often that's what we see and that's what we react to, and that's what makes us mad. And it is not always connected to exactly what your first impression of it is. Very often it's not. Like there's so much clickbait out there. There are so many companies who their business model is basically, here's an item, here's some text, here's some content. I'm going to put, 1,000 headlines with 1,000 images, and I'm just going to pump them out there as much as I can. And whichever one gets traction, that's the one we start to advertise. Like it's a little greasy, right? Like their whole thing is to really grab your attention, and they'll do it in any way possible. Number two, do I understand the argument from the other side of this issue? So you don't need to agree with it, but you do need to understand it, right? If you don't have any idea why someone would be against a major issue, you got to dig in and learn. If you feel passionate about it as well, you have to understand where people are coming from so that you can have a reasonable debate with them. And if your goal is to change their mind, you need to understand where they're coming from, right? And I think it lifts us all up. It makes us have much better conversations and not just screaming online. Number three, what do I gain from engaging with people online when I or they are upset? So start to think, like, when I'm screaming at this person online, does that make me feel better? Maybe it does, for a second or two. But does it feel as good as just not even worrying about it? Do you know what I mean? Like, and maybe it's different for everyone, but take that time to really understand how you feel, what actions you took, and then how those made you feel. You can even experiment, right? So if I react right away, how did I feel afterward? Did that feel good, or was I just as exasperated and frustrated because then they came back at me, or did I feel better just giving it a break, and then a week later, I don't even remember what I was mad about, right? Like I just looked at my phone when I was at the dentist's office because I was bored. Like I don't need that. I don't need to engage with that. And then always, is there a better way to communicate or get my point across? So are you just trying to be right? Like, do you just want to make sure this person knows how wrong they are? Or do you actually want to create change, right? And if you actually want to create change towards something positive that you think is correct, is there a better way to do it? Hint, yes, there most certainly is. But actually, like, put into practice those ways, right? Like, don't just be someone who screams and yells online or shares things that are inaccurate. Be someone who does something offline, or be someone who creates a strong argument that you believe is fact-based. You know what I mean? Like, let's not just scream and yell online. If you really want to make change, you really want to change people's minds, do it in a positive way. Do it in a more creative way. Do it in more of a really positive, non-confrontational way. That's what's going to get it done, right? And the beauty of this, I guess, is that we're always feeling new emotions online. So you can ask yourself those questions once, you could talk about them with your family, but as you get older and you have more complex emotions, or you're dealing with more complex things online, there's always another opportunity to go through these again and really think about how you feel online and have these conversations as a family. This isn't a one-time thing. You should be doing it. I assume your kids would never come home if you did it every month, but if you did it every year, at least, like, that's a good start. And that as a parent or loved one, that really helps you check in with your kids too, because they might be struggling with something online that they have big feelings about, and you won't know until you really talk to them about it, or you can talk to them about it as a skill, and then that might be a byproduct of what you're talking about. They might open up about this stuff. So an excellent conversation to have with your kids, and excellent skills to build up. And as always, shout out to the team at Cremoti. Like, obviously I love them for sponsoring these episodes, but when you do an analysis with their tool, they do a sentiment analysis of every web page that they analyze. And so it gives you a bit of a feel of what emotional tone that article has. And it has an element on emotional tone. It has an element on patience. So every time you're using that tool, you're getting an opportunity to think about how you feel, and how skills like patience, how your emotional tone affects the way you react. It's a really important piece of the puzzle that I don't think you're getting. There's nothing like Cremoti, but you're not really getting that in a lot of other conversations about digital citizenship. So shout out to the team at Cremoti too. Way to go, guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, Paige, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. I know it's a humongous topic, but
yeah, but that's so, like, I know that we're talking about this a lot through the lens of, digital literacy, but I think that those skills of, like pausing and reflecting and maybe taking a break before you respond, and like using empathy and trying to understand the other person's perspective, like all of those are such great, like you said, great skills for all of us to continue to develop in every aspect of our life. Will just make us like better communicators and more compassionate towards each other, which is just so important and so needed.
Yeah, it's funny. It's definitely a digital literacy 21st century skill, but it's also a skill that's been around as long as humankind, right?
Yeah. It's easier not to use those skills online, like you said. Like, there's that veil of anonymity.
Yeah, it can be very toxic, right? Yeah, there's just no consequences to what you say. Whereas in the real world, a comedian said this about bullying, but it applies to, which it kind of is online. If you're really going after someone, that's a form of bullying, I'd say. But it was like, before the internet, if you bullied someone, you would see the reaction. So they would either punch you or they would start to cry, like as a kid, right? And if I have any empathy in me, if they're crying, that feels bad. That doesn't make me feel good. And if they're trying to punch me in the head, that also doesn't make me feel good.
No.
And so you get some immediate feedback that, hey, when I did that thing that wasn't nice, I get some immediate feedback that made them not feel good and me not feel good. So I'm not going to do that as much. Online, you don't get that at all. Yeah. Almost the opposite. If you say something horrible that other people think is funny or something, it's raised up. It becomes viral, or people like it, or it's kind of an awful feedback loop for bullies. And it doesn't happen all the time, but it's not a great setup. So all the more reason to take your time wading into that world.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Thank you for sharing all that with us.
No, you bet.
And so what are some, like, yeah, there's some not great people out there making not great comments, but what are some like really uplifting, fun, encouraging things that you're seeing online right now?
Yeah, and so I had seen this a long time ago, but I just found it again. If you search an experiment in gratitude on YouTube, I can put this link in the comments as well. But it's a group called Participant. I don't know a ton about them. They do have a lot of content. Some with Dwight from The Office, which I think is awesome. But it was basically, they brought people in off the street and they said, hey, can you write a paragraph or two about someone who had a massive positive influence in your life? And so these people did this. And then they said, hey, we're going to call them right now and you're going to read what you wrote about them. And it is just absolutely like tear jerking.
Yeah.
But it was, they were so energized after this exercise, right? And I was like, shouldn't we all do this? Like, shouldn't this be something we do almost yearly? Like, just put it on the calendar and be like, I'm going to write a paragraph or two to someone who has just been amazing to me. And what they found at the end was both parties felt way better. So the giving of gratitude, and I think this has been scientifically proven, the giving of gratitude makes you feel better. Almost nothing makes you feel as good. It's not some money, it's not sex, it's not whatever. It's gratitude. It's making sure that people understand what an amazing impact they've had on you. And I love that, right? Like that's the way it should be, but that's not always the way things play out. And that this seems like an excellent example. And it's just a really nice video. I feel like it's something you could easily emulate, although we never do. And I saw a long time ago, I've never done it, which is ridiculous. But I think I am. I'm going to put a note in my calendar to just give it a try and write out a couple of paragraphs and see what happens. And I think everyone else should too. Have you ever seen that?
I haven't seen that, but I love that because we do something similar. You know, when we do our retreats, we do team retreats twice a year, which I'm on right now. But we do something called Hour of Appreciation. Nice. And we don't take the full hour to do it, but basically whether we're doing it digitally or in person, everybody essentially gets a piece of paper or a board on the tool that we're using, and then we just take 20 minutes and you go around to each person's board and you just write something that you are grateful for or appreciate, something that they did or just a quality about them that you appreciate, and then it's just something that at the end of the 20 minutes we each have a few comments of things that other people appreciate about us, and we got to appreciate other people, and it totally feels so good, and it's great to go back and look at that. So
I like that. I'm supposed to lead some stuff this summer too. I might steal that. That's excellent. Yeah, I like that. That's excellent. Because I saw something about a compliment circle or something, and it was for same thing, team building. And I couldn't fully wrap my head around it because you don't want anyone to get left out. Do you know what I mean? Like if it's just like everyone's complimenting the same great person, everyone else is sitting around. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna steal that.
Good idea. I'm gonna look up this video too. That's awesome. Thank you. Great. And so we do have a few minutes left, but before we go, Sean, we do have a question that we want to pose to you. So I think probably 2 months ago we talked about how do we manage our kids' screen time, but this question that we have is specific to teenagers because teenagers can be, as everybody knows, a little more difficult, a little tougher to like manage anything they do. So how can we limit screen time with our teenagers? Because I would imagine maybe that approach would be a little bit different from young kids and kindergartners.
Totally, yeah. Teenagers have some opinions, and they're big opinions. So there's some interesting things you can do. Obviously, every family's different, every kid is different, but some really cool strategies I've seen work. Number one is the same thing you could do for little kids, is just model it yourself. There's lots of parents who they're like, I can't believe my kid is on their phone all day, as they're doing a TikTok or whatever. And so just modeling it yourself, right? Have some downtime away from your phone, especially when your kid's around, so that you can interact with them and have some family time is massive. There's nothing that, what's the wording of this? There's nothing that predicts your child's behavior more than your own behavior. I think that's not the right way. But so it doesn't matter what you tell them and what you say to them. It's a lot more about what you do. And then have set times where devices can be on and off. So I love this one where it's when you get home from school, maybe you have an hour to catch up with friends, make plans, whatever you need to do. But then between 5 and 8, that's family time, that's dinner time. The devices all go in the hat. We're going to talk or play board games or read or what have you. There's just going to be no phones. And then again, if you need to catch up with your friends, before bedtime, that's fine, right? It's just having that. It's so easy to get sucked into just always having it in your hand. And the half second that I'm bored, I'm on it.
Yeah.
And I get sucked into something. So just to have it out of reach, nothing's going to happen in that 3 hours. You're fine, like no big events. You won't miss anything. And so that's just a good strategy for parents and teenagers. The coolest one I've heard recently was a friend of mine. He has a kinetic charger. And so what a kinetic charger is that you wear it on your body and it charges as your body moves. And so for his kids' devices, he took their cords and he's like, I'm going to hang on to these and you can charge up your phone with your kinetic charger. And that's it. And so his kids have to move. They have to get up. They have to move around to charge their kinetic charger. And they don't charge very fast. I think if you're moving all day, I think you get about a quarter charge. And so he's just started. So we'll see how it goes. But I love the idea. And I think it'll help really manage how kids would use their phones too, because they wouldn't want to use so much power. So they might put it down for a minute. They might power it down. And so there's a bit of an eco consciousness there too. And just a power consciousness. So I loved it. I think it's an awesome idea. I'm definitely going to torture my children with that one.
Yeah, I've never even heard of that. That's so cool.
Yeah. So I looked them up. There's lots of them out there now. They're just wearables. It's like wearable tech. Just you go for a run and you put it on, or you just walk around all day, and they just very slowly charge themselves up. And if you use that for your devices, it makes sure you're not sitting down all day. They're awesome.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And then last is my solution to everything is go traveling. So if you're worried about your kids being on their phones and devices for too long, there is no better solution to anything than just getting out of your bubble. Go somewhere that is maybe a less wealthy country too. They have terrible internet often. There's not Wi-Fi on every bus. You're forced into not really being on your devices all the time. And I think too, like we said before, you get bored for half a second and you check your phone. And when you're traveling, that you're often not bored for half a second, right? There's so much going on. So yeah, that's if you break up with a significant other, lose your job, my answer is always go traveling. And the same is for managing screen time for your teenagers. So that's what I got. I hope that helps people.
Great, thanks, Sean. I would say too, like traveling, going to another country is awesome. If you're in BC, there's tons of backcountry that doesn't have service, so you don't even have to leave your province or drive too many hours. I was just in Arm a few weeks ago, and they don't have cell service there, and it took me probably the first 6 hours to get out of the habit of just checking my phone. It hasn't dinged in a while, what's going on?
Totally. Or just you're bored.
Totally, you're just bored. But it's so nice to unplug, and I can't even look at it if I wanted to. And then after some time, you stop wanting to. It's really freeing. And
it's interesting too, when you get home, you've missed nothing.
No.
Right? Like nothing has changed. Like I did a year away with my now wife, and when we got back, the news was the exact same. Like we didn't even miss big world events, really. Like things move pretty slow, really. You don't need to become always linked in. So that's a great suggestion. There is, I bet anywhere, even in wealthy countries, you just need to get away, not even that far, and you probably won't have cell service. So that'd be perfect.
Yeah. That'll do the trick.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I love talking about all this stuff. So I think we're going to get together again in September, and I can't wait.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks so much, Sean. Have a lovely summer, and we will see you again in the fall.
You too. Thanks so much, Paige.
Thanks. Bye. Okay, so thanks, everybody. Like Sean said, this is the last of our live streams for the summer. So we will resume again on Wednesday, September 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And in the meantime, be sure to subscribe to the Kermode YouTube channel to keep up to date with our show, all the awesome updates from our friends at Kermode Education. Go back and watch any of the previous live streams as well. And if you would like more information on Kermode and how it can help you, your family, your school, or your public library become smarter, safer, and kinder digital citizens, go ahead and contact their amazing team at info@comodieeducation.com or visit www.comodieeducation.com. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you in September. Bye, everybody.